One of the things that we heard in the last panel was how you were moving away from Tier 1, Tier 2 cities and going further down. So to take a look at the insights from retailers expanding into those areas, into Tier 2, into Tier 3, and as we heard earlier, going as far down as Tier 6, I'd like to call on stage our panel, Sunil Nayak, CEO, Reliance Jewels. Lalit Agarwal, I'm going to call him back, CMD at Mart. Rahul Vira, CEO, Skechers South Asia. Rajesh Seth, CEO, FBB at Future Group. Anand Aiyer, Business Head, Easybuy Landmark Group. Amit Chaudhary, Co-founder, Lenskart. Arun Goel, VP Product Management, ShopClues. Viren Razdan, Managing Director of Brand-nomics. And to moderate the discussion, Debashish Mukherjee, Partner and Head of Consumer and Retail Industries at Kearney.
Great. Anish, thank you very much. The topic we have today is something which is very close to my heart. It is about whether this whole fashion business can be translated easily into Tier 2, Tier 3 markets. And the topic, to be very specific, is about the opportunity to expand into newer markets. Is Lalit, by the way, here? Lalit hasn't come. So we have a very illustrious panel, which is across what we would call the fashion industry, from jewelry, footwear, fashion, eyewear, e-commerce platforms, brand expertise, and this is really a fabulous panel. And we have about 60 minutes. We'll get started. What I wanted to do is to ask each of you a specific question, and we can go one by one, and we'll try and keep 10 minutes at the end for Q&A. Okay? So the first question which I have, which will be useful to get your views on, is just this first topic of expanding into Tier 2, Tier 3. Has a kind of implication that what works in Tier 1 can be expanded into Tier 2, Tier 3. So my question is, do you believe in that? Or do you believe there is a nuanced strategy required to tailor products for Tier 2, Tier 3? So that's my first question, and then I have other levels of questions. So does this work, or is it Tier 2 for Tier 2, Tier 3 for Tier 3, Tier 1 for Tier 1? So we can just go this way.
Yeah, thanks. So as mandated, I'll restrict myself to the jewelry industry.
I'm so sorry, Sunil. I did not introduce each of you. I think most of you... Hi, Lalit. Welcome. Lalit, why don't you come this side? Please, thank you. If you don't mind, so anyway, I can just... most of the folks here don't require an introduction, but Lalit, CEO of Mart. Let me also, Sunil from Reliance Jewels, Rahul from Skechers, all CEOs of the companies, Rajesh from FBB, Amit from Lenskart, Anand from Landmark, Arun from ShopClues, and Viren from Brand-nomics. Thank you all. So Lalit, just a quick summary. My question was the topic, which means kind of implies expansion into Tier 2, Tier 3, as if Tier 1 products can be taken to Tier 2, Tier 3. I'll come to you second. You might need some time to think. So the question is it really Tier 2 for Tier 2, Tier 3 for Tier 3? Or do you really believe this one-size-fits-all, literally speaking in fashion, works? So Sunil, we'll start with you.
So as I just mentioned, I'll restrict myself to the jewelry industry with specific reference to Reliance. So at Reliance Jewels, we strongly believe that in today's era, where the technology has advanced to a level whereby the reach is not restricted, the more importance from our side is given to the second tier and third tier cities. We are talking about second, third, fourth tier cities, about 600. While we restrict ourselves to the 8 metro cities, while we are present there and we will continue to expand there, our major focus will remain into the second and third tier cities. The reason being that While the metros are overcrowded and we are relatively a younger brand, we feel that the penetration is much easier with the Reliance brand name. You don't need to introduce yourself to the last individual in the interiors. So for us, it makes sense to expand rather concentrate on the second tier and the third tier cities more than the metros. The obvious reason is that your P&L can be, your profitability can be achieved much earlier than what in the ideal world we would have taken in the metro cities.
Yeah, Sunil, what will be perhaps useful for the audience also is, one is the penetration issue, which is a demand question perhaps, but will you be expanding with the same assortment, same pricing?
I think it's from the jewelry perspective, even within the metros, the assortment and the products differ from location to location, depending on what profile we cater to.
Fantastic. Thanks. I think that is a fairly clear answer. Rahul?
All right. I think a lot of times we sit in the office and define what tier 2, tier 3 markets are, and we create an imagery about these markets based on, all the intelligent minds that sit in the office. The reality actually at times is way different than what we, sit and discuss. Classic examples in our case has been Typically, the planning department will work with and say that, this is the assortment that is there for our metro or the top stores. And when you move into a tier 2 or 3 town or maybe 4, the assortment changes because there is a price barrier or that is kind of understood. Your assortment has to be, more approachable. And that's how you, start building your assortment. Interestingly, what we have seen is actually that's probably incorrect because the consumer in the tier 2, 3, 4 town is also expecting a similar kind of assortment that is available in a metro. Yes, there is a certain amount of customization that is done, keeping in mind like what Sunil mentioned about the profile of the customer, the market that you are entering. But our experience has said that, like I'll tell you one very classic, we just finished our training for our Spring Summer 19 for all our retail team. And one of the feedbacks that we got is from our store managers from these tier 3, 4 towns is that, sir, why are we not getting, shoes which are like 10,000 rupees and 12,000 rupees and 9,000 rupees? And we were like, would you be able to sell this in your market? And sir, the guy was like so confident that, sir, we get customers who want such expensive shoes, and we are not putting it in our assortment. And it's just one of the thought process that in the office, itna mehenga nahi bikega wahan par. But actually, there is a customer who's ready to buy, but we are restricting ourselves by not putting it, by the fear of thinking, the goods are going to be there and they're going to get stuck. Then you will have to sell it on discount. How are you going to do all that? So actually, a lot of things are done in the office, and reality of the market is way different. The consumer is wanting because, like he mentioned, there is access to internet. They are seeing it on online platforms. They are seeing what you're launching. They are seeing what Bollywood or the celebrities are doing, and they want it. Yes, there would be a certain class of customers who probably may not be able to afford it, but there is a good amount of consumer base over in these markets that can actually buy these products. So it's all about, understanding and getting that matrix right. And it's a learning process. Enough has been talked over, so many conferences about 3, 4, tier 3, 4 markets, and to me it's evolution. We are just learning, and every time that we move into these markets, every different market that we move into, there is a learning that comes to us.
Thank you, Rahul. Rajesh, I'd like you to comment on that, especially from Future Group's perspective. And my guidance to all the panelists is, all of us will have our views, which are absolutely right from our perspectives. It'll be useful, I think, also to talk about what it will take to create scale. All of us have been sitting, at least I've been sitting on this panel for 10 years. We still don't even have $1 billion business here. So we are all cottage industries by our global standards. So talk about, and you are a scale guy. Do you agree, disagree? You don't have to be so stark about it, but what's your view? Because my view is actually quite different from what Rahul said. To create scale, it's highly customized, and Of course, if I was Skechers or Nike, it's absolutely right the way what Rahul says. So what would your reaction be?
Yeah. So thank you so much, and thank you all of you for staying back during lunch hour. Certainly the room looks half empty over here, but okay, for us, life starts at tier 2 and tier 3 towns. Let me start with some facts and figures since we're discussing scale here. Today, ABB operates out of 160 cities in the country, and out of the 160 cities, only eight metros account for so-called tier 1 towns. So large part of our business, which is roughly around 65% of our revenues, come from tier 2 and tier 3 towns. And within that, 65%, around 35% business comes from tier 3 towns. Now, what I did is, for this discussion, I was just trying to look at the assortment mix, what we sell in tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 towns. And to my surprise, what I saw is that we sell more ladies' western in tier 2 and tier 3 towns, which would be slightly more in contradiction to the belief that the youngsters are not as fashion forward in tier 2 and tier 3 towns, which is not the case. We saw a huge penetration in kids' wear segment. We saw a huge penetration in men's wear segment. The only category where tier 2 and tier 3 towns had a little lesser contribution in terms of business revenues was ethnic wear. Now, it kind of completely amazed us. I looked at productivity in tier 2 and tier 3 towns. Productivity is at par with tier 1 towns. So on any matrix, when I cut the data and I look at the business, I think the tier 2 and tier 3 towns has got immense potential, no two ways about it. As an expansion strategy from our group's perspective, I think so this number is only going to increase dramatically. In fact, we put dedicated teams in smaller towns and smaller cities to expand business. It's unimaginable for all of you to even imagine that when you go to states like Bihar and UP, the number of stores that you can open and the population and the consumption pattern that exists over there, it's mind-boggling, We as a team in Big Bazaar travel 5 days a week, and I can tell you that I've traveled in this country almost 150 towns. In the last 7 years, we just travel. That's all we do. And it's unbelievable how these cities are turning around, how the expectations of the consumer in these cities are very similar to what you see in so-called tier 1 towns. The aspirations are same. Obviously, like everybody mentioned, the availability of data, access to internet, access to video on demand, everything, aspirations are same. I don't think so aspirations change anywhere. So for just signing off that for our business, 65% revenues come from tier 2 and tier 3. And this number is only going to grow.
That's a great commentary, Rajesh. Thanks.
So I would remark this, and coming back to the question, that probably we are in a jinx where if I need to define a strategy for tier 2 and tier 3, I first need to take out this concept whether that's a tier 2 or tier 3. And as Sir rightly mentioned, that when we see a store specific in a city, there could be different strategies to it. But let's consider that, if I'm opening a store in a tier 3 city and I'm not considering that as a parameter, that is a tier 3 city, I will open the same store as I'll open in a tier 1 city. And if I take insights from then and then learn from that, there will be good insights. What is happening for some time now, that we have been applying some strategies and we have been learning from those strategies, and we are trying to reapply based on the statistical knowledge that what could be the strategy for the next step. But we are not thinking fresh. To give you a simple example, if we are consuming social media, is the content different in a tier 1 city versus a tier 3 city? Probably some bit, but not entirely. It's different. So when people are consuming the same thing on internet, they are also consuming the same brand mileage on wherever they are, right? And I'm not talking about entire rural, but our total economy of the country sits in tier 2 and tier 3 and not tier 1 primarily. It is when these tier 2 and tier 3 are consuming so much of the economy, there has to be, we as brands, which needs to be present there and take our, bring our accessibility there. That is, as Sir was mentioning about Big Bazaar, and I have also traveled across cities and I've seen that huge Big Bazaar stores which are crowded, and only because people understand that power of a brand and can go and have access to it. I personally feel that the kind of rentals and the kind of efficiencies we get in tier 1 versus the efficiency we get in tier 2 and tier 3, that will be the obvious choice for all the retailers. Because not only in terms of getting sales, but also in terms of long-term sustainability, that is the only way to succeed in India.
Thank you, Amit. Anand?
Yeah, I think yes, we all keep talking about tier 1, tier 2 and kind of things. But for me, I think the opening line that I would like to say is that the small towns or the tier 2 markets are large opportunities in small pockets. Okay, so that's the broad lining. There is always a consumer who will be consuming a similar merchandise in metro, in small towns also, like, from a Skechers point of view, there will be a lot of consumers who will be looking for high-end price points, and there is a aspiration that is very high in the small town. Nobody is telling that there's no aspiration. Everybody wants to consume more. But if you want scale, if you want that kind of expansion and be relevant to that kind of market, it's very important that you have to build a strategy which has those aspirational qualities, because the consumer is looking for aspiration, consumer is looking for, because of the digital penetration and because of, the social media, they all want to be the same. But they want a little bit of customization, which is relevant to the smaller market and adaptable to the social standards. Okay, so we believe that as Easybuy, we have started a new format in Landmark Group. We know Landmark Group has been there for a long time, and we are part of the Max division. And Max has been quite a successful value fashion brand. Okay, 3 years back, as a strategy, when we were looking at it, how do we expand to the next level? We have largely been in the metro markets, even after 13 years as Max, and quite a profitable business. But we will not be able to penetrate quite deeper into small town. And one of the things is profitability, because with that kind of scale, large stores, the operating cost and the sales that comes in is not economically viable. So if you need to make it viable and make it a strategy to go all out in small town, you need to have a different strategy. And that's how Landmark created Easybuy 3 years back. And it's largely focused on how do we get to the small town. And what we have done is that a lot of changes, everything is different in the format. Max is 12,000 square foot, we have 5,000 square foot. We have made our formats more compact so that it is easier to expand to the smaller market, and we can take chances and we can take risk in terms of when we enter into the small markets, because bringing a big store, it will be a lot more challenging in terms of penetration. We also reduced our prices, so we are 20% lower than Max. So that makes the affordability much important, because we said huge opportunity, small pocket, which means that the consumer in small town are more coming, repeat customers are very high. They keep coming to you because, and hence they want freshness. So the merchandising that you see in metro, usually in our fashion, we use spring, summer, autumn, winter. But now in small town, it's going to monthly drops, so that there's a freshness that's coming to the store on a monthly and in a quarterly, in a 3 months basis. So I'm saying right from merchandising to the process to, I think from strategy, there has to be a lot of differentiation if you really want scale and you want to satisfy that market and yet be profitable. So, for valuation, one can get into large stores into small market, but if you really want to, make it big and scale it up, I think a little bit of customization, keeping aspirational elements of the metro, because the consumer in small town, when they go to the mall, they see those kind of retail experiences and they want the same retail experiences. So you have to deliver the retail experiences, you have to deliver the similar fashion products, you have to deliver those kind of expectations of the customer. But I think little bit of customization to those markets is required. Yeah.
Thanks, Anand. Arun?
Hi, thank you, everyone. Okay, so I will talk about what ShopClues does. Bear with me for a second, though. ShopClues has always had the strategy of tier 2, tier 3. Our 60% of our orders, we do about 100,000 orders a day. 100 million customers or visitors come to our site a month. 60% of our orders are in tier 2, tier 3 towns. But what does tier 2, tier 3 really mean? Why did we always thought that tier 2 and tier 3 is going to be important, right? From the onset. We have always been the marketplace for the masses. Why? To answer this question, let's go back 15 years in time and look at our neighbor at north of us, which is China. 15 years ago, you know, the data suddenly became affordable to vast masses in China. 300 to 400 million people in China suddenly had almost free data access. They became internet consumers. And the data suggests that after 8-9 months of becoming the internet consumer, they started transacting on e-commerce. Their first transaction was 8-9 months later. This story, let's fast forward 12-13 years in India. Jio comes about. Thank you, Reliance. Jio comes about, gives us almost the cheapest data on earth available right now in India. Suddenly 400 million, 500 million people have access to internet. We've been waiting. We know that these people also, if we say that it were to replicate China, they would come back and make an e-commerce purchase. Totally, there are only 50 million people who have ever purchased on e-commerce in India, right? Where is the remaining 400, 500 million people? They are sitting in tier 2, tier 3 towns, geographically, but the mindset of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 has blurred, but geographically, they're still separated. However, these 400 million people, sooner or later, would come in and do an e-commerce transaction. Now, the e-commerce platform might have its different flavors. There would be e-commerce, you know, only online. There would be omni-channel. There would be O2O experiences. Experiences also count. That's technology to solve that problem. But these people will come, they will purchase on e-commerce. Sooner or later, it's going to happen. While China in 15 years ago was $7 trillion economy, we are $2 trillion economy today. It's 3x GDP per capita. It's almost about 3x per capita income at that point of time in China vis-a-vis us. So clearly, there is going to be a huge market coming in. We don't have to worry about the assortment, really. There would be market for every type of products. There would be, and large market. So therefore, this story really blends in when you say that it really doesn't matter. You put in some stuff out there, and you still see that tier 2, tier 3 demand is outpacing tier 1. Right? It's happening. It will always happen because the market is going to be so huge. We are seeing the trickling effects coming up now. 50 million customers have migrated to 60 million in 1 year. It's about 20% more jump. But we have to reach up to 400 million, and that's going to happen in the next 4 or 5 years. That is 8x growth in e-commerce. And phygital, if you want to call it, which is a catchword which everybody wants to use, but really what is phygital? Phygital is giving experiences online and offline, connecting them together, giving a customer the experience that they can discover online and purchase offline. They can place, book order online, go and pick it up from the store nearby. If they're in the store nearby, do the endless aisle. They can browse the catalog. If they don't find the size and color out there, they can go and pick it up later or get it delivered to their homes. So all that experiences will drive the purchase. It is important that the brands realize this. And there's realization coming in. There's a shift in strategy which is happening at the brand level. They want to have a sizable business coming from online channels instead of 1%, 2%, about 15, 20% to come from digital channels or omni-channel, right? So tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 mindset is very blurred. Everybody, once I asked an Uber driver who was taking me home, do you recognize the brand I'm wearing? He says Aeropostale. The next guy tells me it's Nautica. They are aware of brand. Maybe their income is not yet out there to purchase that brand, but there's aspiration. People want to buy brands. And I just believe that is just the matter of time. With 8-9% growth in India happening year over year, there's going to be in 4 or 5 years affordability coming in at that segment, at masses, at tier 2, tier 3 level. So I think it's a huge opportunity that everybody should be aware of and be prepared with.
Thanks, Arun. Viren?
Actually, I've forgotten the question because it took a while. Could you just repeat?
Question is this quote-unquote expansion into tier 2, tier 3 a lift and shift, as I call it, from tier 1s to the others, or a more customized, nuanced view is required?
So, actually this, a lot of us, have this mythical view of tier 2, tier 3 markets. It actually reminds me about 2 decades back when Nike was in conversation, maybe earlier. They used to look at India as a tier 2, tier 3 market. So that was their viewpoint, that it's a huge market. We don't know what to make of it, but there is parts of it as appetite, but we don't know how to culturally fit. I think that's, I have a sense of deja vu there, where all of us look at tier 2, tier 3 markets and say huge appetite, huge numbers, but it's a bit fuzzy, it's a bit complicated. I think 2 decades later, I think one of the key change points has been access, whether through digital or other ways. Aspirations have completely catapulted from how we used to think. The small town mindset it's all democratic now. Everybody's on a aspirational highway. And, but at the same time, I think it brings me back to this Nike example, because it's not, India is a, amalgamation of many different markets, which are at different stages of evolution. And marketers have to adapt to that, because consumers won't adopt to you. So I think it has to be a different sort of story, this thing. There is also one more angle from a brand point of view, which, you hear a lot of brand marketers saying that we want to retain the exclusivity. We don't want to be mass as yet, which means that, if you recall our earlier concept, where culturally we used to say that hum sheher se leke aaye hain. They want to retain the prestige of having bought it. It was like, how we used to get Levi's from the US. Now you get it around the block. So I think it's a matter of timing, where tier 2, tier 3, does it mean massification or does it really mean going there? I think that's the challenge that marketers and brands have to answer. The market is there, no doubt about it.
Sure. Thanks. Lalit?
I would first of all like to understand and know from the audience if someone and the people who are sitting here, anyone lived in tier 2 or tier 3 ever? Can you please raise your hands? And if one of you can answer his question, maybe you can answer his question on what kind of difference do you think? You must be speaking to your friends in tier 2, tier 3, wherever you stayed. And what did you find? I mean, do you find that difference being there or not?
This is a very lovely platform, first of all, so congratulations to everyone who's come here. I have a very different background. I come from one of the most up markets, Dubai, and I'm currently staying in a tier 2 city or a tier 3. That's Nasik. Okay. So it's a very different scenario for me because I've seen all the top fashion brands. And when I need to continue my search for what I was using in Dubai, I cannot find one in the place where I am. So I have to come to Mumbai, I have to go to Bangalore. That works for me because I've been traveling. But as a tier 2, tier 3 customer, what I feel is they are really eager in following the trends. And as the gentleman said very rightly, the data is something which is helping the customers today in India. So today it's all about every customer, I think, is over and above where he's residing. It's all about the brands and companies, whether you can reach out to them. If you can provide them the opportunity to get what they're asking, then I think there'll be no differences irrespective of the location you are in.
Thank you. I think this is the answer because, we know and every one of us know this is true. But there is a fine line differences also. Now, it is true, but it is not true to the sense that what works in tier 2, in this tier 2, will that work in that tier 2? Or what works in this tier 3, will that work in that tier 3? So there is a difference, and that's where we need to keep analyzing and understanding, because India is culturally very diversified, and there are differences in different regions of India also. Maybe a Maharashtra or a Gujarat can be a little different tier 2 versus a different tier 3, or a Northeast can be a different tier 2, tier 3 versus a Bihar or a Rajasthan can be a different tier 2. So we need to understand the social condition of that particular territory, because here I'm trying to speak from the sense that, we operate more than 210 stores, but 160 towns, out of which almost 142 towns are in tier 3. So large part of our operations are in tier 3, and we still have a lot of differences between tier 3. And there are tier 3 which can have the boldest of the fashion, and there are tier 3 which can have a little minimalistic fashion. There can be a tier 1 store, a tier 1 town which may behave like a tier 3 store, because the footfall in that area where your store is, it may be in a big city like a Delhi or a Mumbai, but the footfall in that area which you attract may be type of tier 3, maybe a type of tier 2. So it's not always true that every tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3 just can categorically be similar in terms of the assortment mix or in terms of the requirement. But I think there is a huge potentiality. There is no doubt. I don't want to categorize fashion to price, because at a lower price also fashion can be delivered. So affordability will be an important phenomena of driving volumetric consumption in tier 2 and tier 3. But yes, fashion is indeed required, and people are aspirational, and it is contagious. It is becoming much more contagious than before. So I think we need to just place it there. I'll just give one more example of a town called Srinagar in Jammu and Kashmir. And it was like 7-8 years back, we wanted to open a store in Srinagar. And when our team went to survey, they said that वहाँ लोग बोलते हैं, don't keep ladies western, don't keep at all denims. People don't wear and people will not wear. But suddenly I said, no, we will keep a small SKU, a minimum SKU, and we'll drive it. And today that store is the second best selling Western wear store in the country. So that's what you actually discover. People come out of the air and they start buying. Under those burqa, they will want to buy those sleeveless tops, and they will want to use those fashions. So everything is live there, everything is there. We just need to be exposing ourselves so that when we be confident enough to understand what works there and how do we tweak it. Because we'll have to tweak that a little and place it there. Because there may be a little dissimilarity, little more similarity in terms of how much exposure do they want to carry, what does the society allow, how much can they carry, and how much can they go out. So that, I think, as a retailer, as a brand, we need to bring in and put it into the product.
Thanks, Lalit. So let me just quickly summarize this for you. I think you've heard different views on the panel. The good news is I'm a numbers guy. So let me summarize it a little more numerically. I think potential is there. That's a clear takeaway for all of you. Aspiration is similar across markets. Is a clear takeaway for all of you. What the numbers, however, say is that the aspirations are not turning into numbers for organized retailers at an all-India level, at the level of growth of the market, right? The top 5% of India come down to 6 lakh rupees per annum. At 6 lakh rupees per annum, with the exception of probably Lalit's company, most of the other people are unaddressable. So the takeaway you should have is India will probably be a combination of big brands trying to convert the 5%, 7%, 8%. That will be an organic osmosis. And there'll be lots of regional players who piggyback on their designs, on their pricing, and who create the local markets. Because the fact is 85% of the market is still out there, and they have been catering to their own constituencies. And I won't say it's only a price play. So there are these different markets which are going to exist. And I can understand organizations can't have split personalities by town type or color type or size type, which is understandable. So that's the takeaway. I wish the representation were also with players who have more wholesale channels and etc. You will find a completely different SKU mix. I think, but anyway, these are all congruent stories. I don't think there's any contradiction. You all have been honored with a panel who have a certain view, which I think is also very important. Okay, now let's move on to the question around digital and whether it's a disruptor, and let's interpret it in the context of your lives, not from the all India lives. So the question is very simple. Is digital a disruptor now in each of your businesses in these different cities? And how do you expect it to change going forward? And in that anticipation, any changes in business model, any omni-channel views, etc. Anyway, you all are the experts. I mean, just if you can talk about digital disruption today, disruption in the future, and any moves you might be taking to safeguard it.
So I think till now, we have been the least affected from so-called digital commerce because we believe that still our customers who are a very, very lower income group who earns maybe 22 to 30,000 rupees per month doesn't buy too many apparels in a year, so may not end up buying too many products which are non-standardized on online platforms. And they have not affected, literally, I don't know. But yes, I think future digitalization is going to be there. It will remain, it will grow, it will penetrate more and more. It is going to come and hit you. We need to be ready. We need to be there. We need to be capable enough to serve them on omni-channel, to serve them both on offline and online, and create those kind of atmosphere and seamless experience which is there. And V-Mart has plans to get into that, and we have already getting into the building of the technology platform so that we'll go omni in 6 months to go.
So from the jewelry perspective, I think the digital commerce is concerned, there is hardly any impact. It's a very, very insignificant portion happens through the e-commerce. But as he has rightly said, at the end of the day, you need to have the presence omni-channel. So like if I again talk about Reliance Jewels, we have planned to launch our own e-commerce website in the coming quarter. So definitely you need to be present there because you don't know where the changes are happening. As far as the marketing is concerned, I think digital marketing has made major inroads, and that has definitely affected the spend on the other media. Again, from the jewelry perspective, where we build the relationship with the customers, I think purely in the newspaper ad or on the TV channels, we are much better off doing through the digital media, whereby we can connect with them, we can talk to them, and it's both ways, you know. So that is definitely major. If not the disruption, it has made a significant difference, you know. Yeah?
The way we look at, or rather I would look at digital is basically 3 C's, content, communication, and commerce. There is a lot of content that is being consumed on you know, the digital media. If you travel by metro, if you travel by local trains, you will see most of the guys are down consuming some content, whether it is Facebook, Insta, or news, or WhatsApp, or whatever it is. So earlier there was a time when people used to talk, and I mean these are the classic WhatsApp that, you know, jokes or you keep on seeing around. Nowadays when you travel by a metro, you don't see anybody's head up. It's actually on the device. So there is a lot of content that is being you know, consumed. There is communication also happening on the digital front, and then there is this whole commerce part of it. Interestingly, what you know, the gentleman mentioned about China's story and the consumption pattern. I think India is actually going to move in that. Right now, the disruption I see is more in terms of content, because you are consuming a lot of content actually on your phone or your digital you know, pads or whatever. Commerce is on its way. It is going to start. There is going to be a whole amount of disruption. What happened a couple of years back was just one part of the story, but the actual real commerce is now going to start moving in, because more and more people are getting into you know, the whole digital thing. And like he again mentioned, with, you know, the data getting cheaper, everybody moving into smartphones. So I think it's a channel nobody can ignore. There is going to be disruption coming in, and you know, there's this whole classic I think a WhatsApp forward that I got, which some of the large corporates in US died because of, you know, some of the internet giants, like, you know, the whole Netflix story. And I think if any organization is not willing to adapt to these dynamic changes, then, you know, the writing is on the wall. So I think everybody has to get ready for these kind of disruptions coming in, and digital is going to be the major one.
Yeah, thank you so much. I completely agree. I think so in our organization, the motto right now is digital first. And let me just give you a little different perspective on digital first outside of commerce. Digital first for us means that our entire product lifecycle management, we've digitized all our designs. Now what it does for us is it helps us to take decisions on new collections very easily. Today our buyers Our merchandisers are able to see that information. Our store managers are able to look at the information from a product lens, and I think that makes a hell of a lot of difference, because remembering a 12-digit EAN code is very difficult for anyone. So yes, we are getting into digitization in a big way. We have digitized our entire inventory management process. We have an indigenous app which we've given to 365 of our store managers where they can do multiple functions at a press of a button with a very simple user interface. Now, this is what digitization means. Now, coming to commerce bit, FBB has a FBB online channel. Clearly, we are seeing a huge amount of business traction. I wouldn't like to discuss the numbers. Numbers is a little slow, a little low right now. But I think so in the long run, omni-channel strategy is going to be very critical for our business. So yes, digital is way of life. And as Rahul mentioned, it's about content, communication, and commerce. For us, we're investing a lot of money in content and communication. Marketing strategies evolving, changing. A large part of our budgets are going to go into digital, no two ways about it. Yeah, so we will exploit digital opportunities to the fullest, given the possibilities that exist, like everybody's been talking about.
Amit, if I may just interrupt you before you start, you are probably along with Arun. I really liked Rajesh's word, which is also our AT Kearney word, to think digitally first. You have done it ahead of the others here. So my question for you is, what have been your learnings of moving from digital to brick and mortar? And if you were to think, what gives brick and mortars a chance? I mean, first of all, why did you all come into brick and mortar? And when you've come to brick and mortar, what do you realize? And do you think any of these folks will survive on brick and mortar? You can be provocative, but so I want a more digital first view.
Correct.
Brick and mortar view, I think broadly understood.
So I think, coming back to the fundamental of commerce, as was mentioned, we were born digital, right? So that was the first channel for commerce for us. But, eventually after opening a lot of, we have now 500 brick and mortar stores. And what we have realized that omni-channel is not about adding a channel. Mm-hmm. It is actually about how one channel is helping the other channel to grow. And that seamless experience of moving from one channel to other for the consumer, how can you make it consistent? Like for a simple example, if you visit Lenskart online, it is now almost compulsory for you to give your phone number. And when you come to an offline store, you give your phone number to make a transaction. We see that 60% of the transactions which happen in the offline store, these consumers first have went online. They chose a product, they have made their selection in their mind, and then they are coming to the store and making a transaction, which means that there is some coherence in both of these channels put together. Similarly, whatever is the channel, I would say whether it is in-flight retail or offline retail or whatever is the channel, we'll keep on adding those channels as multi-channel. But omni-channel is all about helping one channel to the other. We never thought that this would be the coherence in terms of consumer moving from one channel to other to make one transaction. And that is where your point of brick and mortar learning comes. That if we wouldn't have been online and we were only doing offline, what would have been our sales? Like, it's very difficult to predict right now. Again, when we were opening stores, there was a divide in our team where one team was online team and one team was offline team as a very natural progression when we do all of this. Online team always used to say that when you're opening a store in a particular pin code, our online sales in that particular pin code will slow down. And now we are there in 350 pin codes, and all of the pin codes are giving us higher sales in that particular pin code than we were when we were not at that particular location. So this learning comes when you are actually executing and you're seeing the value of the consumer in that particular catcher where they're consuming your channels with a consistent experience. That has been our learning overall, and that is what we primarily believe omni-channel can deliver.
Lovely, thank you.
Yeah, I think I agree with him, and I think the previous session also, we were saying that how many people are buying online, how many people are buying offline. I think a lot of people who were doing both online and offline. So definitely, consumer are seamlessly moving from online and offline, and I think digital doesn't mean only the e-commerce version, but I think digital for me is very clearly that you need to be connected with your consumer, because they, as he said, they seamlessly go through your product. They see, engage with you in the digital world, whether it's social media, whether it in terms of Facebook or whatever the other mediums of digital is there. So they interact with the brand, they see the product, they do some sort of a research on what they are liking and what trend and other things. So definitely, as we also said, in small town especially, the digital and the digital has been an enabler. I will not call it disruptor for me, enabler in terms of enabler of fashion, because the consumer are a lot more aware of what are the new trends, and they want to experience those kind of products, those of experiences. So when formats like us, as when we take those international kind of look and feel, good retail ambience, and with a relatively in-trend merchandise at a affordable pricing, the acceptance that we are seeing is far superior. So hence, the consumer are knowing what is in trend, what is in, in terms of seamlessly looking from digital to online and offline kind of thing. So as a brand, I think we have to be engaged at the digital and the social end. And I think we must give that space to the consumer, I think, in both the channels. That's my take on the digital and non-digital space. Thanks.
And Arun, is this digital adoption very similar in these smaller towns?
Okay, so yes, I can tell you this, that, digital adoption in the smaller towns from the consumer perspective, it is. We see that there's consistent growth in the number of visitors coming from the smaller tier 2, tier 3 towns. Consistent growth in number of orders happening from those towns. So there is fair amount of adoption in terms of how many people, customers who come from tier 2, tier 3 towns. However, like I was saying before, that we are only beginning to scratch the surface. It's going to be much more in coming years from those towns. But I want to touch upon the digital. What is digitization? I completely agree with Amit here about, it is not about having disparate channels. It is about how those channels talk to each other. It is about, O2O experiences where a customer can discover few things online or even offline, and they want it delivered online, or they want it delivered to a different store, they can go and pick it up from a different store. Or if at a store they don't find a color or a size of the particular item that they like, they've already seen that item, they like that item, then perhaps they just want it delivered to their home, or they can come later and pick it up from the store. Or if the discovery is online, they want to know if this inventory is available in the store near to them, in the right size and color. Can they order online and then go and pick it up from the store? So all of this requires huge technology integrations, really, because you need single inventory view. You need to be able to talk to ERP and the point of sale solutions, and also perhaps WMSs, to be able to also manage the supply chain. You also need to be able to show selection and merchandise corresponding to a specific location. So you need all of those hooks into online world as well, where discovery can happen seamlessly, while offline also, where they can go and pick it up. So you need to have the correct view, real-time view of the inventory, for example. Right? Now, why do brands want to do this? So I've been talking to brands. So we have started a new vertical in ShopClues, which is about enterprise solutions. What we have done over these 7 years is that we've built technology for scale, and we also built operations for scale. And in this journey, we've kind of realized that it's an incredibly hard journey. To be sitting at where we are, it took us millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars actually, to build technology and operations at scale. Now, when we have been engaging with brands, different brands, about, how do they see that strategy? Like I was talking previously about this, that they have, there's a shift in strategy. They want to be able to grow the business from sub 1% to 10, 15%. But it is driven by customer need. The customer wants to be able to experience this brand. It's not, customer's brand loyalty can also shift. So if a customer wants a specific brand, and the product quality itself is not important. It's also the experience that they get online. They want to be able to discover it online and, experience in any of this O2O manner or fashion. Now, also these customers want to do one more thing. They want to be able to, so think about, I was talking to Lalit before, customers want to be able to know while they're discovering a product whether it would fit them or not. Like a mirror kind of a thing where customer can use, where the platform can provide VR and they can see beforehand whether the fit would really happen or not. So customer wants that they want to be able to know that before this is delivered and go into the cycle of returning and then getting another product back and then retrying that. And also the platforms and the brands also want that there's going to be minimum logistics cost involved in this. So it is driven by customer. You need to have disruptions. You need to have very relevant VR solutions out there, right? Now the thing is, brands are not, they don't know whether they want to embark on this journey. It's a very hard journey to travel. So the thing is, they need to partner with someone who can basically commoditize scale for them, where they can go and buy just scale. Okay, if I were to go and get this solution, would I be able to just immediately scale up to 10, 15% in 5 months? So there's a lot of technology innovation that needs to happen over there. And this is where I believe that it needs to be done. I'll give you one example quickly. There's this company called Ocado. Ocado is a grocery company in UK. They have been supermarkets and they've been doing that. They built that solution wherein they are able to scale and do everything at scale, digital operations, whether it's fulfillment operations or digital marketing or customer care, and all of those operations have been built to scale, and they just took that platform and they are now powering several supermarkets in the United States. They're giving them technology. It's like a turnkey solution, build, operate, and transfer. And most of these companies are adopting it because it's a very quick turnaround time. They get scale. It has been commoditized, and all of this is happening. I think fashion also needs this. Fashion brands need this. They need to have a shortish, scaled-up cycles. They don't have time for 6, 7 years to experiment and then grow. And this is where the digitization is going to help. And there are opportunities, and there are firms who is going to help achieve that thing.
Thanks, Arun. Do I need to repeat the question? You're okay with it?
Was it about digitalization?
Digitization, yes.
Yeah. Actually, you see, digital is like electricity. It's the new medium. So, we'll have to constantly, sorry, you saying something? Yeah, I'm saying you'll have to constantly disrupt within it. But culturally, if you look at markets across, they operate on 2 paradigms, touch and tech. And if you look at within India as well, as consumers will evolve, the tech factor will start playing a greater confidence role versus the touch factor. So, maybe 10 years back, you were not willing to buy a pair of jeans because you did not feel confident on how the cloth feel would be. The confidence will bring tech into play more and more. So it's a balance of tech and touch. As the market matures, it will move towards tech, and disruption will have to happen there.
Interesting. No, very glad to see the optimism. We'll keep time. I'm just going to ask the last question to 3 of you, Lalit, Sunil, and Rajesh. So I think the 3 trade-offs we've talked about is investments in these smaller markets, investment in the more competitive, bigger markets, and digital assets. If you had to just divide 100 points in these 3, where is your current monies qualitatively being spent? Nobody's asking for exact numbers, but big cities to gain relevance in tier 2, tier 3, or to gain relevance digitally, because everybody only has a finite amount of money, right? So let's see where the money really is.
So I think very, very clear, VMart's strategy is primarily tier 2, tier 3, and also now tier 4. So 80% of our money is going to go in physical store in tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 town, and yes, 20% in the digital side. And digital doesn't only mean commerce, but also mean internal digital, which Rajesh was speaking about.
So as far as the Reliance Jewelry is concerned, we are somewhere about 70% in the second and third tier, 30% in the metros, and practically nothing in the e-commerce,
I think close to around 40% is going on the digital part of it, and probably the balance 60 is divided between tier 2, 3, and tier 1 also, because tier 1 is a little expensive to operate.
So we are essentially offline retailer, which is very digitally savvy. So 70% of our revenues are always going to be offline in terms of brick and mortar stores. Within that, tier 2 and tier 3 is going to take a large portion of our business. Like I said, our take on digital is going to be how do you make digital an enabler for our business, and therefore, yes, a significant amount of investment is going to go in that as well.
Fantastic. I think you've heard very different views. So we have, say, 4-5 minutes for questions. So please just raise your hand, and if somebody has a microphone, you can address the question to a specific person. Please introduce yourself. Somebody here, please. Sorry, till you get a mic. Yes, sir.
My name is Ashok Sarda. I want to ask to Big Bazaar. They have stores in A towns, B towns, and C towns. There is a perception in the villages, smaller towns, that the leftover inventory of the A-class towns goes to the B and C-class towns. Is it true?
That's a first for me also. But thank you for that. Yes, Rajesh. Is there a...
You know, it's the other way around. More often than not, the freshness index in smaller towns is higher than the bigger towns, because in bigger towns, people believe that everything is fresher. That's on the lighter note, but no, nothing of that sort. We are in the business of food, fashion, and home. Fashion has to be fresh, food has to be fresh, and home has to be relevant. So there's nothing of that sort.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Siddharth Nara.
Sorry, if you don't mind. Yeah, this next for you.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Kaustubi Shukla from NIFT Jodhpur. So,
thank you.
On the basis of the first question that you asked, as sir from Skechers specified, so even in the city of Jodhpur, all these sports brands are placed right next to each other in the main market area. So the store manager from Skechers approximately 1.5 years back understood that, you know, there was a demand in women's sportswear of shoes belonging to the category of like approximately 10 to 12,000 rupees. And by the time they could reach to the higher authorities and the assortment could be offered in the store, Nike understood the same thing and they offered shoes which were belonging to that category. But unfortunately, for the next 1 year, their revenues from the women's section went down and it was only 10% of what they could make actually. So how do we understand something which is, you know, feasible for the rival brand would be feasible for us too? And especially when, if we are of the same category.
Interestingly, what happens is, like you rightly said, yes, there are these feedbacks that come, and what happens is when you work at a larger level in terms of assortment building, in our case, what happens is everything is an import that we work with. So there is a larger lead time scenario that we work with. And that's also a challenge at times, because when you want to implement it on a faster basis, you can't do that. Yes, you learn a lot of things that happens, like, you know, this is all competition mapping that you'll end up doing. And you realize that, okay, say if a competing brand like a Nike or an Adidas or a Puma is selling an X price point, and, you know, as a brand, you can also do that. At times, you see an opportunity, you implement it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. It also depends a lot on the product that you have in place, because what happens is, a lot of times we make mistakes saying that, you know, at the end of the day, what does a consumer land up buying? He looks at the product, he does a price-value equation that is it worth this price, okay? Now, assuming if your product is worth that price, you know, you're going to land up selling it. In our case, interestingly, at a larger level, when I do it the entire company, 50% of our business comes from women. Okay, so for us, women consumer is a very important consumer, and we don't compromise on that. Yes, there could be challenges in terms of lead times, but this is something that it's a very conscious effort that we ensure that it happens in all our stores on that front.
Thank you, sir.
Anish and other organizers, we should have more women on the panel also. Yeah, perfect. Anish, I promised him one last question and we close. Thank you so much. Yes, please.
Yeah, my name is Siddharth Narang. Good afternoon. So we are about winter women's ethnic wear. Probably we would be one of India's largest. And my question, like we have been talking about tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities. So I want to know that besides this, if with, like today, global warming is a major concern that is coming up, the countries have been talking about it. How do you plan your strategize when it's about winter wear in India, in tier 2, tier 3 cities?
Lalit, why don't you take that?
Even if post-globalization or global warming, I still feel in small town, the infrastructure that we have right now and what is available in terms of transportation, in terms of the houses, in terms of the facilities that people live in, and the fashion, because during winter times people want to do want to themselves to be looked like in fashion, and primarily looking at our Indian calendars and our process in small town, largely consumption happens only during festivals and marriages, and that's where winter is also there. So I think it very much coincides with our cause and our demand, and I think winter wear is going to do good. We should be only understanding the kind of ethnic that you prepare, because today is the world where ethnic is not only ethnic, and ethnic is very regional, because what we see when you go to Meghalaya, there can be a Jatiani hill sari, and then you go to Assam, there can be a Meghla chadar, and then you go to a Odisha, or there can be a Sambalpuri sari, and then Bengal can have a Tat sari, or some other place can have something else. So there are ethnic is very, very cluster specific, very, very regional in taste. We need to understand that very well and then produce it. That's how we, I think you'll be able to grow, because that's what customer wants in the small town.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you, panelists. You all have been very frank and authentic. Thank you, all of you.